Welcome to Mana's Seal YouTube channel. The previous video link is on the description box or on the top right card. Volume 15, The Half-Elf Godkin. The next moment, many arrows were flying toward it. All the arrows that were sent flying hit the Ursus Lord's face or forelegs and were repelled, and if they hadn't hit, they pierced the ground or trees right in front of it. It was not that they had missed. Even if it had started moving, its body was just so huge. It would be harder to miss. The aim of those arrows that had been loosed was not to deal damage to it. It was to draw their foes' attention and to buy some time. However, the Ursus Lord didn't stop for even an instant. All it did was sneak a glance their way. What the hell? Our opponent sits at the top of the ecosystem, right? What the hell is going on there? It completely ignores being attacked by lower-ranking beings like us. It doesn't view the weak as being weak. It's behaving as if it had some objective. Has it attacked a dark elf village somewhere else before? Does it know that children and other weak people are in the center of the village? So it was trying to deduce its location by intimidating us. Perhaps it's because it learned this kind of hunting when it itself was weak, so rather than ignoring us, the Ursus Lord is aiming for the weaker targets. It was precisely because this kind of hunt had succeeded in the past that it would do the same thing over again, so it made perfect sense. That would hold true even if it had become one of those beings that took pride in their own strength known as lords. If you considered that, then it repeatedly attacking the elf trees was probably to gather the ones who could fight around it, or some other such objective. When you thought about it that way, the contradictions in those odd behaviors vanished, and it all made sense. And even that might be based on a successful experience on a previous hunt that went well. Be that as it may, at the point they had guessed that, there was only one thing Agnia and the others could do about it. Not allowing the Ursus Lord to head towards the village center, where the children and the others should be. After it, the master of the hunt didn't even have to say anything. Everyone jumped off the bridge and ran across the ground. If you were to run across the bridges suspended from the elf trees, you would have to make small but inevitable detours. It was extremely dangerous to run in a place where the Ursus Lord's paws could easily reach them, but they had no choice but to do it. On top of that, it was because, even if the Ursus Lord were to turn around and start attacking them, they would still be able to buy some time. It seemed difficult for the large-bodied Ursus Lord to run through the rows of elf trees, and even if there was an overwhelming gap in their running abilities, it wouldn't have a let over them in running through the village. On the contrary, Agnia, who took pride in having the most outstanding physical abilities among the Dark Elves, succeeded in closing the distance between them. He could hear screams coming from the direction they were headed. It wasn't from someone being attacked. It was because even the people in the center of the village had seen the figure of the Ursus Lord. There was a place called the plaza in the center of the village, but it wasn't on the ground. It was a place that looked like a wooden tray hanging in the air, and was held in place by the bridges that extended from the trees. When the Ursus Lord arrived at the plaza, it rose up. When it spread those two thick terrifying arms, it roared again. It was louder than the ones from just a short while ago. It held more than enough force to make everyone in there freeze in place. The plaza was separated from the ground for the time being, but the Ursus Lord's huge body could easily reach it. The roar that made you feel the difference in status as a living being and that massive frame that terrified all who saw it. Those two together gave it a fighting power that left countless people low-skilled novice rangers and children petrified. Agnia threw aside the dark elf-style compound bow and emptied both his hands. These bows were the treasures of the Dark Elves. The materials used to make them were not from this forest, but were taken from the land where they once lived. There were few spare parts to repair them with, and they could never be made again. He would probably be reprimanded by the elders for treating one so roughly. However, he didn't have the time to carefully store it away. Ooh! Agnia howled to raise his own morale, and jumped on the Ursus Lord to try and draw its attention away from the crowd. When he clung to that huge body, he used the hard, rugged hide as a handhold to clamber up it, as if he were running along its back. The Ursus Lord raged, twisting its body to try and brush Agnia off. In an instant, his body stood out against the background, and it seemed like he would be pulled free and sent flying by centrifugal force, but he somehow managed to withstand it. He was able to reach the back of its head like that. The Ursus Lord's rage grew even more violent. It was obvious as to why. Even a dark elf would probably act the same way if a bee was buzzing around their neck. Agnia drew himself closer to the Lord's neck, as if he were stuck to it, and desperately endured it so he wouldn't fall off. It was strange that it wasn't rolling on the ground, or scratching it in with those terrifying claws, but it was good luck for Agnia, and he should be thankful for it. What the hell are you doing? Run. He hadn't wanted to make a sound, but it couldn't be helped. In fact, the Ursus Lord's movements seemed to become more intense in response to his voice. Arrows came flying as if to hinder it. If it were someone with a skilled arm, then even in this situation Agnia would almost never be hit. However, not even one of Agnia's shots had pierced one part of its hide. There was no sign that the arrows were wounding the Ursus Lord. If they couldn't even scratch it, then even arrows coated in poison wouldn't have any effect. Agnia poured strength into both of his hands. There was no way he could let himself be separated from the Ursus Lord right now. What felt like an abnormally long amount of time passed, and the Ursus Lord's movement became just a tiny bit slower. Continuing to rage had probably worn it out somewhat. However, their opponent was a lord. Its toughness shouldn't even be in the category of common sense. There was no doubt it would recover right away and go on a rampage once more. Agnia's hands were numb. He probably wouldn't be able to withstand the next one. This was his final chance. He reached out one hand to his waist and drew the dagger that was there. And then, in one breath he lifted himself up until he was at the distance where he could reach the parts of the Ursus Lord that looked vulnerable, his eyes and nose. It had parts, such as the neck, that didn't have armor. However, there was thick meat under the dense fur in those places. He had no confidence that he could deal any damage to it with the dagger he held. At that moment, Agnia's body gently floated up. The instant he had released one hand, the Ursus Lord violently shook his body. Even though at the best of times he had finally been able to cling to using the full command of his body's faculties, there was no way he would be able to endure it in his current posture, with one hand not holding on. His field of vision was spinning around in circles, and he could hear screams coming from somewhere. She. Once he realized what was happening, he immediately threw away his dagger, and reached his hand out to his waist. What he took out was a small leather pouch. He was slammed against the ground. The impact had pushed the air out of his lungs, and, for an instant, he fell into respiratory failure. However, while there was pain, the impatience boiling up within him was stronger than that. Agnia, who was lying on the ground, locked eyes with the Ursus Lord right in front of him and was glaring at him. He couldn't move. His body was petrified by the pressure coming from the Ursus Lord before his eyes. He knew it would all be over if he made a wrong move. The breath expelled by the Ursus Lord reached him. That it had such an unduly pleasant scent was surpassed. No, it wasn't at that level, it was more in the range of amazement. Agnia felt like he was going to laugh. There was nothing to think about nor hesitate over. He had already prepared himself for the worst. Bring it on. I'll let you eat my flesh together with this. Being eaten by the Ursus Lord was the worst thing that could happen, because it would remember the taste of dark elves. However, what if it didn't like the taste of dark elves? He loosened the string around the mouth of the leather pouch he grasped tightly. It was a poison that had been given to him beforehand. When he considered the size of the Ursus Lord, it was far too little. However, even if it wouldn't be a deadly poison, it would be able to teach it the taste of that poison. When it opened that big mouth and bit down on him, each of his arms would throw the poison-filled pouches into it. It would be over if it attacked with its claws. If he were bitten, it wouldn't end with just his arms. Agnia had prepared himself for this. No, he had decided a long time ago. He lived and died for the sake of this village. The reason he was stronger than the others was definitely all for this day. Now come and get it. The dark elves of this village are gross enough to make you want to throw up. The Ursus Lord looked away from him. What the hell is it doing? The Ursus Lord, roaring once, swung its tail and arms. It then repeated those attacks on the surrounding elf trees, as if it was venting its anger at something. It was almost as if it couldn't even see Agnia, but there was no way that could be possible, because he sensed that they had actually exchanged glances. Agnia, hurry. Unable to take in the situation, the confused Agnia suddenly noticed the voice of one of his ranger friends. He was prepared to be eaten, but it wasn't as if wanted to be eaten by choice. But would they be able to escape? The Ursus Lord appeared to not have any interest in them, but he knew that it was flicking its gaze towards them. He wondered what it could be after. Is running away the right answer? He didn't have a clue. Their opponent wasn't transmitting a shred of his intentions. When Agnia had reached the heights of confusion, an arrow that suddenly came flying by struck the elf tree right in front of the magical beast. Coon, the shrill sound that was enough to give you goosebumps, clearly resonated and spread out like a ripple. All of the dark elves, even the Ursus Lord, stopped moving. All around them it fell completely silent, as if someone had thrown cold water over everything. Within that silence, a lovely voice resounded. That's about enough out of you. The whole world sparkled. The figure that suddenly appeared from behind Agnia was a dark elf child. However, they weren't a resident of this village. They looked like they could be either an extremely pretty boy or girl. No, if you look very closely it was a shockingly pretty girl. In spite of himself. Cute. Agnia, let slip. How could a girl possibly be so pretty? It was a beauty that far surpassed that of the morning dew when it changed to droplets of water and fell from the leaves, struck by the light of the dawn, and sparkled like jewels. It was as if she appeared to be emitting a blinding light from within. This was probably the cause of the world seeming to sparkle just now. Moreover, it was as if the glimmer of life was enveloped in a smell that came from her movements. Agnia's nose was twitching in spite of itself. If he could take even just a tiny bit of that scent into his lungs, it would be to have it fill his entire body through the blood circulating in it. What is this fragrance? It was as if each and every one of his cells were dancing in joy. In the hands of that girl of unmatched beauty she was wearing gloves, so not being able to see those fingers was frustrating. How? She was grasping a shockingly exquisite bow. That marvelous workmanship was definitely not just for display. It held more power than any other bow Agnia had ever seen, and his intuition as a ranger was screaming at him. But who cared about all that? The unbalancedness of the girl having a bow that was out of proportion for that body became one of the factors that increased her cuteness again. Everything about her was charming. She was sparkling. Hey there, monster. Go on, get out of here. I'll never let you do more violence than you already have. Cute. Too cute. Super cute. He definitely should have heard it just a moment ago, but at that time that beautiful face had caught his attention, and he didn't remember hearing her voice. However, this time his brain was properly responding to her voice. It repeated over and over again in his head like a refrain. And every time it did, he was on the verge of breaking out in goosebumps. With a snap, that girl of unmatched beauty thrust a finger at the Ursus Lord. Why, he wondered, wouldn't she point that finger toward him? It was frustrating. It was regrettable. He was sad that those beautiful eyes didn't perceive him. Guru. The Ursus Lord growled. That wasn't a growl meant to intimidate prey. That was a growl out of fear. The Ursus Lord was wary of that girl of unmatched beauty. Naturally. Whoever they may be, when a girl of unmatched beauty to this degree appeared right before their eyes would shrivel up. They would think that perhaps she was a goddess. Of course, there might be those who believed that magical beasts couldn't have that sort of aesthetic sense. However, that way of thinking was far too foolish. Agnia strongly denied it. He had grounds on which he could deny it. Magical beasts that possessed mighty powers were beautiful. If so then, paradoxically, it wouldn't be at all strange if this girl of unmatched beauty possessed absolute power. That's right. There wouldn't be anything strange about it. The instant the Ursus Lord gave a sign that it was going to try to move, Agnia opened his eyes wide in surprise. The girl of unmatched beauty already had an arrow knocked on her bow.